Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey chapter 402. It is the third day of the week, the Spirit Bomb workout. I feel very good right now, very excited for this workout. But anyways, to the main subject matter for today, Looksmaxxing. So, yes, I wanted to talk about this because this is a interesting subculture that is getting the spotlight currently in a bunch of niche, from a bunch of popular YouTube channels. Generally speaking, if you don't know what Looksmaxxing is, it's just the idea of trying to maximize all of your looks to be the best as possible in a certain rating scale that has been probably talked about, or I'll talk about it maybe later. But the main reason why I wanted to discuss it is because there are some good, some bad, and something in between in about this. And I wanted to discuss it generally because I think that it's a very interesting topic right now, to say the least, because I think that there's so many sides to it, especially because there are people who take it to the extreme, and then there are people who just do, not so extreme. There are different levels to it, and I think that generally speaking, if we were to just generalize it, it's technically, I would say, a good thing. In essence, it is something where you would want to look as best as you can. That's just simple. I don't think that anybody could probably disagree on that. I don't, that just seems kind of stupid to even disagree with. But of course, like everything else, it's probably tainted and has been tainted by certain things and certain structures. So we're going to be talking about all of that and a few other things and some thoughts and opinions I have about certain parts of it, because it's really just a deep and interesting conversation to have. So we'll be looking at that and a few other things when we get to Mother Base.
All right, so started this day off with AD press, which was pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Looksmaxxing. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because this has been in the popular conscious recently, as many people have been getting popular from this niche from the internet, because of course everything has a niche, and this has been something that has been in the background for quite some time, but people like to ignore it because it's usually that's how these types of things go until someone or something takes it to the extreme and gets popular. Thus why somebody like Clavicular is a popular person. That's just how it is. But before we get into it, I wanted to look at the Urban Dictionary of it, because I doubt it will be an actual word, not quite yet, but it is looksmaxxing. Verb. This is referring to a physical improvement of a person's body in terms of development of facial features or muscular improvements in order to make oneself more attractive or easier to like. This term is derived from a video game type idea of stats, and a leveling system where looks is one of those stats and max means that the stat has been filled to the limit the game set. The main reason why I wanted to start there is because I think that that's the baseline, and I think that generally speaking, this idea is good. I don't think that many people can argue against it in the certain sense. A lot of people like to make the argument that the work starts from the neck down, but obviously there are certain things that you can do to make your face look a little bit better, but there are the extreme cases, but we'll get back to that. But I think that in the end of the day, taking care of yourself is still a massive good idea. I don't think anybody can disagree on that. I think that you're seeing what this is taking it to the nth level, the ultimate degree, in which case it's fine in a certain sense because, to each their own or whatever. But that's where we start creeping into the bad in certain senses. I think that when you start doing extreme cosmetic procedures and things like that, that's when things start getting shaky. And this isn't even necessarily just a man or woman type of thing. I think this is just generally how cosmetic procedures are. They are very much a risky gamble. It's not something that is gendered. But right now, I think that because of it's many men doing it, it's the opposite of what was once seen here in at least the North America, because cosmetic surgery is something that is prevalent in many Asian countries. So that's a whole different ball game. And when it comes to this, you start dabbling into that level. It's certainly like steroids or taking shortcuts, or some of these guys even take steroids. It's not necessarily a good idea for a lot of different reasons, but that's just because there's a shortcut to the end goal, in which case they don't don't really care about the later years in life. And that's part of one of the bigger issues I have with it, is just more of a lack of seeing into the future of what this could cause. And I think that a lot of them are really short-sighted. They want the results now, to the point where they are willing to risk life and limb later on in life, and the realities of what they're looking at, whether it be something like, if they're juicing now, they're going to deal with the years that they've cut off on their life, or the party lifestyle that they'll be able to try to afford that is going to leave them dead broke, or the possibilities of the overdoing it with certain cosmetic surgeries, which can happen to both sides. It's not like this can't happen to women, but this is taking it to the nth degree with the autism that many of these people have. It can become a neurosis, to the point where it's like it happens to many women, where they just keep going at it over and over and over again. Obviously, we're not seeing this yet, of course, but this is what the downward spiral of that can cause. Now, I'm not going to say here and say that this hasn't worked out for people, of course, but it also just leads to another issue, which is, what do you do when in the future, when you have kids? Obviously, I think a lot of these guys, or at least some of them, have thought about this, and obviously they will hopefully be in their children's life to explain what happened, obviously. But I am curious to know what would happen with the partner. If you are, quote unquote, to use some of their phraseology here, they're going into their new looks match, they're matching with somebody with their new looks match, and they realize that their children aren't looking how they should look, and then thus that ends up making it so, do they reveal what they used to look like, at a certain point? Is that something that is revealed? Is that something that's revealed in either of the situations? I remember a long time ago at this point that there was a Wang video about this lady who ended up getting sued by her husband because she looked completely different, and their kids were ugly, or something along those lines. I don't necessarily think that's going to be everybody, but I do think that that's going to be a slightly more common scenario. But also that I have a feeling that a lot of these people aren't actually going to care about reproducing at all at this point. They are in it for other purposes. I think that the purposes that is getting so popular are the points where you're starting to see diminishing returns, where just like every other technology, no matter where you go, no matter how good you get, there's a certain point that you could only be so good. It doesn't matter what it is. This is also a part of it where people don't realize that at this point, you're getting to the uncanny valley of attractiveness. You're getting to the point where you're not even real. And this isn't just this, but generally at a certain point, when you max out certain things, it becomes useless. You can take this to anything, and it's like that, where diminished returns become a reality. And I think a lot of these people who end up taking it to that degree should probably realistically pull it back some, because at a certain point, you're just wasting money. And I don't even want to start on the limb lengthening stuff. Well, that's a whole other episode. I also won't go into this too much because I would like to make a whole episode about it, but I'm not necessarily against it in the sense that it is slightly feminine in a certain way as well, because a lot of people end up attacking it because of that, going in the most gay way possible or whatever. But I feel like that isn't necessarily a bad thing per se, depending, of course, what it's like and what the person is like. But that's kind of a different subject in and of itself.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Looksmaxxing. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because this is a good topic in a certain sense, where the end destination kind of matters in a certain sense. I think that yes, you probably should do many of things or anything that is in your power to make yourself look better. But there are certain points where it just becomes diminishing returns, just like everything else in the world, really. At a certain point, you're just going to get to maybe a point where you're just looking better to other people that are in the niche community rather than the gen pop that you are in theory doing it for at the beginning. Same thing with bodybuilding, really. I think that a lot of people end up losing their goal at the end of the day, because a lot of the times the goal is to be with women, but then at a certain point it goes beyond that almost. It feels like it's seeking that purple dragon, basically. That happens with a lot of steroid users and stuff like that. And I think that it's not a good thing after a certain point. You know, there are people that you can take it far, but once you start doing like the extreme cosmetic surgeries and stuff like that, that's when it starts getting a little too crazy. And I think that the biggest thing about that, and that's the one, I guess, issue I would have with it really, is that when you get these cosmetic surgeries, let's say you get like the limb lengthening one or something along those lines, or the double jaw one, it becomes an issue, especially later on in life. Let's say you have a kid and then all of a sudden you pass down your genes before you got that surgery, and then thus you kind of basically pass down what is essentially the sins of a father into your child, and you're not really setting them up for failure. It's like you've passed the buck along into the next generation instead of having to just deal with it on your end. Of course, that's not always the same. And of course, if you are in your child's life, then there you can, probably help him out, but still, it just doesn't feel right. It almost feels like you're passing it along and not really stopping the cycle that is continuing on in some way, shape, or fashion, whether it be with finding a partner that's actually your looks match or something along those lines. It just feels very interesting to me that that's an unknown, or at least a thought that isn't happening yet with these types of people, whilst in the future, probably in like 30 to 40 years, we'll see some kids that are growing up and realizing, oh, my father was a looksmaxxer, but all of a sudden I'm not 6'5", I'm 5'8", you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be a lot of stuff, and a lot of it will probably be blamed on genetics on the mother's side or something along those lines. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a weird thing. Like I said, that's where it starts to get into almost evil like territory, where you're passing the buck along. You're passing your sins to the next generation, which just doesn't seem right. But a lot of these guys don't even care about having kids, so it doesn't even matter really. But that's a whole other story for a whole other day, really, because I don't think that's right, but that's a whole other conversation. But with that being said, though, tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. If you have a story about somebody who may have done a transformation where they do some extreme stuff, whether it be male or female, but today we're going to be focusing on mostly on male, please let me know in the comment section down below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. Like I said, maybe eventually I'll talk about good and evil when it comes to looksmaxxing and stuff like that, like surgeries and all that, but that's a different story for a different day. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy. Stay safe out there and stay warm. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.